Hi, this is MoneyWise, a show about personal finance and how to save and spend your money wisely. I'm your host, Howie Kaufman. As our guest today, I have asked Jimmy Becker to join us again. Jimmy is the founder of Financially Speaking, an organization that provides financial planning services and conducts financial literacy workshops. On today's show, we would like to focus on retirement planning, a topic appropriate for working people of all ages. Jimmy, thanks for joining us.
Thanks for having me on the show, Happy. Very happy to be here again.
We've got a lot of video call-ins, so I suggest we just jump into some of the calls and see if we can get all the calls in. So let's roll the first video call-in.
Hey there, this is DC from Brooklyn, New York, and I'm calling because I have been in the same job for a couple years now, been putting money away into my 401k, and I'm starting to think ahead to the future when I might be moving jobs, and I don't know what to do with my 401k when I move jobs. Like, I don't know if I can take the money with me or if I reinvest it somehow or what happens. So any guidance you could provide around what happens to my 401k and what I should do with it when I move jobs would be really great. Thanks very much.
Okay, and we actually have another caller with a similar, different 401k question. Maybe we can run that second video and we'll merge those questions and see if we can answer them together.
Hi, I'm Marge from Newton, and I need your help. I've worked for over 30 years in a variety of different jobs. Some I've liked. For instance, I worked at one place for 15 years, another place I worked for 6 years, and one place I worked for 2 months. But what all these employers have in common is they've given me 401k benefits. And at this time, I have a hodgepodge collection of different 401ks that I need to roll over into one place where I can really keep an eye on my investments for the future. Appreciate your help. Thanks.
So I like Marge's expression of a hodgepodge of different accounts. I've got that same problem. I think I inherited it from my dad. I've got a few dollars in this account, a few dollars in that account. And in fact, I need some computer software to help me keep track of everything. But I would imagine you think it's important to streamline these different 401k accounts, and maybe you can address DC's question about switching employers as well as Marge's hodgepodge of accounts that she's wrestling with.
Sure, very good questions, and putting them together I think is apt. So when you leave an employer, every time you leave a job, you have 4 options for your 401k. The first choice is just leave it sitting with your old employer. That's a bad idea because they may have poor investment choices and they may have high fees. The second choice is to roll it into your new employer's 401k plan. That's a worse idea because once you move it in, you're stuck with that plan until you leave that employer. So if they have high fees and poor choices, you can't do anything about it. The third choice is to take the money out and run with it. That's the worst idea of all. Don't do that, DC, because you're going to pay taxes, you're going to pay a penalty, and all that money you work so hard to save for your retirement is going to be gone. The last option you have is to roll it into an IRA. You should do that every time you leave a job. Why do you want to do that? I think Marge's question really explained. First of all, you're likely to get lower fees and better investment options. And you're going to have more flexibility for the future, and once you get older and you have to administer these accounts, it's going to be much easier to manage, as you heard from Marge, if you just have one place to go. So every time you leave a job, roll them into an IRA.
And can you do that? Can you consolidate that online, or do you have to do it by snail mail or worse, in person?
No, it's very straightforward. It's a process. You do it once and then you can set it and forget it after that point. You don't need a new IRA for each old 401k. You can keep dumping them into the same IRA.
Great. It sounds like a little bit of business housekeeping goes a long ways when it comes to keeping those straight.
A little bit of housekeeping. That's it.
All right, let's take our next question.
Hi, I'm Alex. I'm 21 years old and I'm from Newton, Massachusetts. So I just had a question. I just graduated from college and I'm just starting work for the first time, and I had a question. How do I deal with, I have a bunch of student loans. Do I prioritize those when I'm first working, or do I prioritize starting a retirement fund? Thank you very much.
All right, kudos to Alex. He just graduated. He's already thinking about retirement. I think student loans are probably hard to navigate. Maybe we have our own show on that at a later date because they're so complex. But let's suffice it to say he's trying to balance his student loan payments, thinking about a retirement, probably has to worry about living expenses. How do you advise him to juggle some of those demands?
Well, it's not a simple question. Because you never want to get behind on your student loans because you get in a lot of trouble if you stop paying those. But at the same time, Alex should create good saving habits early in his career. It's just like any other behaviors we hear about. Eating, exercise, sleeping. You want to create the habits early. So my advice to Alex is he should try and save something now for retirement, even if it's a small amount, and then ramp it up when his student loans are under control or paid off. And also, if his employer offers a match for his 401k, he definitely should take advantage of that. So my advice is try and save something if you can to create the good habit.
Okay, that sounds like reasonable advice. Try to at least start with something. All right, let's try our next question.
Hi, I'm Meredith. I'm 60 years old and I'll be retiring soon. And I was wondering about funds to invest in. And I know that there are two different types of funds. There's an index fund and then there are mutual funds. And I was just wondering what the difference was between the two of them and which would be better for me to invest in and why. Thanks.
Okay, so can you define what an index fund is and how that compares to a mutual fund?
Sure. So let's start with what is a mutual fund. A mutual fund is really where multiple investors pool their assets and they're professionally managed. You may have heard of firms such as Fidelity and Vanguard. They manage these mutual funds. Typically, they focus on a single asset class, which is a fancy Wall Street term. It really just means stocks, bonds, real estate, money market, international stocks, etc. So there are mutual funds for each asset class. Now, there's two ways that these funds can be managed. They can be actively managed or passively managed. A passively managed mutual fund is an index fund, where the manager is just trying to match an index like the S&P 500. An actively managed fund is where they're trying to beat the market. So, to complete the thought, an index fund is a form of a mutual fund, and it's passively managed and it has lower fees.
Okay, and there's another term that Meredith didn't mention. It's a target date fund. Can you explain what a target date fund is?
Sure. A target date fund is a special kind of mutual fund. It's designed for retirement savings. In this case, everyone picks a retirement date that's close to their retirement age. They typically go every 5 years. Thus, all the investors in that fund are roughly the same age. In this case, the asset allocation, which is a fancy term for just the mix of stocks and bonds, will shift over the years as everyone in the fund ages. It'll go from mostly stocks in the beginning to more and more bonds as the years go by. And this shifting is done automatically by the manager, so you don't need to do anything. It's a set it and forget it approach. That's known as the glide path. And I recommend to all my clients that they use a target date fund in their retirement account.
Okay, and I think you brought along an animation that kind of explains that mix of funds. Can we run that animation?
Sure.
Can you walk us through it?
Yeah, so what happens is when you start out when you're young, it's almost all stocks. You can see the pie chart is almost all stocks. As you age, the allocation towards stocks goes down and the allocation toward bonds goes up more until you hit retirement age and beyond, and then it levels off typically at around 30% stocks and 70% bonds, because as you get older, you want less and less risk in your portfolio.
So now, if you want to be a little more aggressive about investing your funds, can you estimate a higher retirement age, even though you anticipate retiring a little bit younger?
Yeah, that's really what's great about these funds. If you want to take more risk, you pick a retirement date that's farther out. If you think your life expectancy is short or you want to take less risk, you pick an earlier date. So they really work for everybody.
Okay, great. Thanks for explaining target date. Those are kind of a useful tool. All right, why don't we run the next question?
Hi, I'm Gerald from Boston, and I was thinking about Social Security. I'm a contractor. I'm thinking about retiring. I want to know if it's still going to be around and what age to grab it? Thanks a lot if you can help me out with this question.
Okay, Gerald really has two questions. One is, do you think Social Security will be around long enough for him to claim his benefits? And then if so, what age should he consider starting to claim his benefits?
Yeah, this is the question that everybody always asks. So on the first question, I think there's little question that Social Security is going to be around. Medicare is in a lot of trouble, but Social Security really isn't. With a few small tweaks, I think everything's going to be fine. In 1983, if you're of a certain age, you'll remember that when Reagan was president, they had a big change to Social Security, and they really fixed the Social Security fund for the next 40 or so years. With a few small tweaks, I think we'll be set for another 75 years. So yes, I think it will be around. In Gerald's case, in his second question, when should he claim? Well, he looks pretty healthy to me, so almost certainly he should wait until age 70. His older self will be really grateful if he delays until then. The reason is, every year you delay, Gerald, you're going to get 8% more. And you really want to maximize your Social Security benefit because it's the best kind of longevity insurance that you can buy. It's an annuity, and it's the greatest annuity ever created because it has a federal guarantee, it's inflation adjusted. If you're married, there's a survivor benefit for your spouse. So you want to maximize the value you're going to get from it unless you think and your spouse's life expectancy are very low. So Gerald, I would wait.
So what would you think of Gerald starting to claim at 65, taking the money he would earn claim between 65 and 70 and investing it in the stock market? Do you think he'd make out better?
Yeah, everybody asks me this. I think it's a really bad idea. He'd make out better if he's really lucky, but he might as well go to the Encore Casino that just opened because it's a crapshoot. Social Security is guaranteeing him with a federal guarantee 8% more each year that he waits. Why would he not take that instead of a crapshoot in the stock market?
Got it.
So he should wait.
Got it. Sounds like you're saying it's different for each person, but the general rule of thumb is to wait as long as you can to maximize the amount of your claims.
It's worse than that. Half the population claims by their early 60s, and it's a bad decision for just about everybody.
All right, let's take the next question.
Hi, my name is Matthew, and I'm self-employed. Every quarter, I write a check to the federal government for estimated tax payments and Social Security, or FICA. I pay the full 100% FICA charge, whereas if I was employed by an outside employer, I would only be responsible for 50% of that fee. Is the FICA retirement or Social Security sufficient when I retire, or will I need additional funds to maintain my lifestyle?
Okay, great. Matthew's actually combining a couple things here. Once he's kind of getting a little technical with the FICA, and as an independent, he has to pay the full FICA amount, whereas if he was employed, he'd only have to pay half. And I think he's implying, since he's paying so much more in FICA, does he get any more out when it comes time to claim his benefits?
Mm-hmm. So first, if he was employed by an employer, his employer would be paying the other half. So it seems fair to me. So I don't think Matthew has a real complaint there, as he probably knows there are trade-offs to being self-employed. There are some good ones and some bad ones. This is an example where you have to pay both sides of Social Security, but his employer would have been paying the other half. In terms of his question of will it replace his income, no, it's not going to come close. Social Security was never designed to fully replace your income, and it's not going to. Depending on his level of income, he should figure that it will replace about a quarter to half of what he was earning. The way it works is higher income earners replace proportionally less from Social Security. It's designed as a social insurance system, so lower income earners will get proportionally more. So Matthew's going to need to save elsewhere in order to retire.
And what kind of vehicles would you recommend Matthew considers to kind of augment his Social Security benefits?
Well, he should definitely be saving in an IRA, and because he's self-employed, he can save in what's known as a SEP IRA for self-employed people, and he can save a lot more than in a regular IRA. So hopefully Matthew is doing that already.
And what kind of limits are involved with SEPAs?
The limits for SEP IRA are very high. So for example, one of the benefits of being self-employed for Matthew is with a 401k, if you're over 50, I think the limit's about $25,000. With a SEP IRA, it's closer to $55,000, up to a quarter of his income. So he can save more money self-employed in a retirement account than he could with a 401k.
All right, so it's definitely, he definitely should not be relying on his Social Security benefits if he wants to maintain the same lifestyle.
I hope he's not.
Okay, all right, let's roll the next question.
Hi, my name's Sheffley, and here's my question. I have a 401k, and I read that it has a Roth option, and I don't really get what that is, and I'm wondering if you can explain it to me in plain English, and let me know if you think it's something I should do. Thanks a lot.
Okay, a Roth 401k, and while you're at it, maybe a Roth IRA. What are the differences, and when is it beneficial to do a Roth?
Yeah, my experience is that everybody's confused between what's an IRA and what's a 401k and what's a Roth versus a traditional as it's known. So first let's explain what that means. So a 401k is what your employer, it's a plan, a retirement plan that your employer sets up. An IRA has nothing to do with your employer. It's for an individual retirement account, as it's called. It's something you do on your own. So that's the difference between those two. Each of those, there are two options, a Roth and what's sometimes known as a traditional or a pre-tax. With a Roth, when you contribute the money to the plan, you do not get a tax benefit or deduction now, but it's going to accrue tax-free, and then when you withdraw it in retirement, it's going to be all tax-free. So it's a nice gift for later in life, but you don't get a benefit now. With a so-called pre-tax plan, when you contribute the money now, you get a tax deduction, you get a benefit now, but when you withdraw the money in retirement, you're going to pay tax on that later. So then the question is, which one is better? So what I like to tell everybody, because this question comes up a lot, is that either is good. Either is better than freezing from indecision and doing neither. So don't do neither. If you're young or your income is not too high, go with a Roth. A Roth is better because the tax benefit of a pre-tax is not worth much to you. If your income is high, again, either can be okay. The differences are usually minor. So if you go with a pre-tax, you're going to be happy you get the tax deduction now, but if your income remains high in retirement, you'll be glad you did a Roth. You'll also save a little bit more money with a Roth. So again, my main point is don't do neither.
And at the risk of getting too complicated, you can actually convert from one to the other into a Roth at some point, right?
You can convert one way. You can convert from a traditional into a Roth. That's correct. And if you do that, the IRS is happy to have you do that because you're going to pay tax at the time of the conversion. It often makes sense if your income happens to be low that year for some reason, you expect it to go up later.
Right. That's, I said it's kind of complicated. It's probably not for the light of heart to figure out when and if to do that. All right, let's try our next question.
Hey, this is Josina from Washington, D.C. And my question is, how can I continue to save for retirement after I have maxed out my 401k? For context, my employer may offer another savings option, but I'm a little confused about it. And my income is too high to continue to contribute to an IRA, so I'm a little bit stuck with what to do with some extra cash flow that I may have at the end of the year. Thanks.
All right, Josina must be doing well if she's maxing out on her 401k. What advice do you have for Josina?
So Josina's question falls smack into the category of nice problems to have. But she's not the first one to ask that question. So there's a hierarchy of options from which you can choose to save more money if you've maxed out your 401k. Before I go through them, the first thing I'll say is stay away from annuities. Those are really the worst things to do. So even though annuity salesmen will try and convince you of that, don't do that. So what is the hierarchy of things you should do? Far and away, the best thing to do, and probably the least well known for Josina, is what's known as an HSA. a health savings account. That's where you can put away tax-sheltered money for spending on health care. But in order to do that, you need, to use another acronym, an HDHP, a high deductible health plan. So if you have a high deductible health plan and you have more money to save, a health savings account is the best deal ever because you get a tax deduction on the way in, and if you spend it on health care, you don't pay taxes on the way out. It's even better than a Roth IRA. So that's number one. The second best is what she mentioned, is a Roth IRA. But as she indicated, there are income limits. If your income's too high, you can't contribute to a Roth IRA. So that's number two if you can do it. The third, which is actually quite similar to a Roth IRA, is what's known as a 529 account. This is a college savings account where you can put in tax-sheltered money. You won't pay tax on the investment income it generates. The only issue there is you need to have kids or grandkids in order to fund it. So it's for people to go to college, but if you have kids or grandkids, that's a great thing to do. So those are the best options. If none of those are available to you, your income's too high, you don't have a high deductible health plan, you don't have kids, the next thing is if you have loans, if you have student loans or any other loans, you should pay them off. That's the next best thing. And then the last option, which is completely fine, and again falls in the category of nice problems to have, is invest the money in a taxable savings account and you'll do fine with it.
Or a taxable investment account. It doesn't have to be pure savings. It can be depending on what kind of fund you want to do.
That's right.
Okay, so Jimmy, we've had questions from people of all ages, and I'd like to push the envelope down a little bit now to kids. And I'd like to ask your thoughts about whether it's worth trying to educate kids at an early age about savings in general, but maybe even retirement funds. What are your thoughts about talking to kids about these kinds of issues?
Well, I think it's a great idea. I don't know if I would talk to them about retirement because that's not going to, it's an abstract concept, but I think it's critical to get kids to save money at an early age. And I have a few suggestions on what you can do, things I did for my kids at various ages. The first thing I would do when they're young is I would create a daddy bank or a mommy bank to incent them to save. When they have some spare cash from birthdays or wherever they get the money, try and convince them to give you the money to save in the daddy bank and see if they can delay the gratification of spending it. They may also learn the value of compound interest, and you could even set up an online Google spreadsheet and show them how it all works. You want to get them just to try and save some money, and they're going to generate interest, and they're going to hopefully learn that that's a nice thing to do. So that's good at a young age. The second thing I would do for them is get them a checking account with a debit card as soon as they're old enough. You want them to learn how the banking system works early in life, how debit cards work and passwords and ATM machines and overdrafts and fees. You want them using the system so they know how it works. So get them a debit card, give them a budget, and let them swipe with it. The last thing I really encourage parents to do, particularly with teenagers, is as soon as they have reportable income, you want to open up a Roth IRA for them. Just try and get them to save the money and learn about the responsibility of saving for retirement. Now, easy to do all this stuff, but hard to implement. So you need to give them a match to save, either whether it's the daddy bank or the mommy bank or the Roth IRA. You need to incent them to match, just like your employer does with your 401k.
So when you say match, you're saying if they put in $50, you put in $50 or something like that. What ratio would you recommend?
Well, I'm smiling because I have two kids and it was different for the two of them. My answer is whatever it takes to close the deal. One of my kids was more inclined to save money than the other, so maybe I gave her a bigger match than the other kid, but you need to incent them to save, and so whatever it takes, it might be a 25% match, it might be 100% match, but you want to get them to get the message that you think this is important and you're willing to invest in it also.
And how successful do you think that you were? Do you think they took money out of their IRAs to spend it on things that were more immediate than retirement goals?
Boy, I wish I knew the answer to that question. I mean, one of the actually great things about a Roth IRA is that you can take the money out of it if you need to. There's not a penalty. The money you put in, you can take out. So it's a great way to save even if you think you might be buying a house or going to college later. So do I think they took the money out? I hope they didn't, but I don't really know because it's their account. It's not my account.
And do you think they were appreciating the difference in just kind of plain savings and putting away money for retirement? Was there an appreciation that there were benefits for saving for retirement that you didn't get in a plain savings account, or is that too early for them to be considering that?
I wish they were here so we could ask them. So I'm not really sure. All you can do is put the guardrails up for your kids and hope they drive the car down the highway in the direction they're supposed to go. So they have a Roth IRA. I hope they learn the lesson of it. And maybe I'll ask them after the show if the money's still there or if they've spent it.
Well, I remember in my case, one of my kids finally appreciated the concept of compound interest, and you could see the light bulb go off, and he appreciated that compound interest was a marvelous thing, and if he was diligent about savings, it could really lead to something.
Apparently, Einstein supposedly said that compound interest is the most powerful force in the universe, so he might be right.
All right, Jimmy, I think we need to wrap now. Thanks for joining us. I think
I love the format. Happy to come anytime.
Great. So financial planning for retirement is getting more attention these days, especially with the baby boomers generation. Also, as we discussed, it's important for people just starting their careers to understand some of the key ideas around retirement planning to help them develop sound plans well in advance of the time they would like to retire. I would also like to thank all the video callers for their very good questions, and we'll see you next time on MoneyWise.
The financial problem started when I was injured at work. There was no money coming in. I had to figure something out quick.
We received our letter of default around Christmas time.
There's nothing worse than having the fear that you're about to lose your home. The desperation that goes along with that is very intense for just anyone. We did go out to see if we could find some foreclosure prevention companies, but during the conversation and meeting with them, we found out that the first thing that they wanted up front from us was money before we even filled out the application. There's lots of companies that were offering the services and making a lot of promises to us that they could save our home. I really just didn't feel comfortable with them at all, and I just decided to take another path.
There are a lot of companies claiming that they can stop the foreclosure process or help you modify your loan. You should be extremely cautious of people who make any guarantee, ask for money up front, or tell you to make your mortgage payments to them.
I called one of them loan modification specialists. They said they could help. They needed a $500 deposit and then $3,000 after that. They said they had attorneys working on their side. They would talk to the mortgage company. They took my money and they didn't do anything for us at all.
We were desperate to save our house, and I guess that's why we believed in them.
It was just a scam.
All of a sudden on a Saturday night, our front doorbell rings. I open the door and there's this lady on our front step talking at the top of her voice saying, "You're going into foreclosure, you're going to lose your home." Well, I immediately asked her to leave. I then called my servicer and they didn't know anything about her. Apparently it was a scam.
Unfortunately, there are a lot of scam artists out there. Some even look to be affiliated with the government. Their websites have official-looking logos and graphics, and their names include words like federal. Hope Now connects you with counselors that provide free foreclosure prevention assistance.
When I met with the counselor that Hope Now connected me with, I was a little suspicious when I first went in there. I noticed that she didn't ask me for any money. I really felt that there was someone finally here that could help me now. I do believe that Hope Now saved my house. If it wasn't for them, I don't know where I would be. We probably wouldn't be sitting here today.
Our counselor was so professional, I was impressed. She looked at our entire situation and helped guide us through the whole process. Everything that she has done was free, no cost to us.
Time is of the essence when it comes to the risk of foreclosure. No one can guarantee you can get a loan modification or that they can stop the foreclosure process. But if you are in trouble, the first thing to do is contact your mortgage company and get housing counseling. You can do this by contacting the Homeowners Hope Hotline at 888-995-HOPE. The sooner you call, the sooner you can get peace of mind.
It's very scary knowing you could lose your house. You feel like you're all alone in the world. It's hard to know who you can trust, but you can't let that fear lead you down the wrong path with people who might be out to scam you. There are real people offering real help, and they're at 888-995-HOPE.